"Stop this ghetto crying and get in the car now." He said it right there, over her mama's coffin. Her billionaire husband, Malcolm Pierce, the man Zariah once believed was her forever, called her grief ghetto while her mother lay cold in front of her. The church went silent. Even the organ stopped. You could feel hearts breaking in the pews. Zariah stood frozen, her hands trembling against the smooth wood of the coffin. The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy, choking, unforgettable. Malcolm adjusted his cufflinks as if nothing had happened. His eyes, sharp and empty, moved past her like she was a stranger. The man who once said, "You're my whole world," now looked through her as if she were nothing. Something shifted inside her. The ache, the shame, the love, they all turned into fire. Right there, beside her mother's body, a new version of Zariah began to breathe. That was the day her silence ended. If someone has ever tried to shame your pain, keep listening. This story was written for you. But before that day, before the fire inside her began to burn, there was a time she believed in forever. Before she became Zariah Pierce, she was a 27-year-old nurse at Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta. Long shifts, tired feet, but a heart still soft enough to believe in miracles. She met Malcolm one rainy night when he came in after a minor car accident. His suit cost more than her monthly rent, yet he smiled at her like she was the only person in the room. He thanked her for stitching his hand, then sent flowers the next day, white lilies and a note that read, "You've got a healer's touch." Their first dinner was at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city lights. He spoke about vision, power, legacy. She listened, feeling like she'd stepped into someone else's dream. When he said, "You'll never have to worry again, baby," she believed him. Every promise sounded like safety. Every glance felt like destiny. Back then, she thought love meant being chosen. She didn't know yet. Being chosen can also mean being owned. If you've ever mistaken attention for love, keep listening. Malcolm filled her days with roses and her nights with laughter. 5-star restaurants, designer dresses, private drivers. He said, "You deserve the world, Zariah," and she believed every word. At a gala downtown, he told friends, "She's not just beautiful, she's the future Mrs. Pierce." Cameras flashed. People whispered her name. For a girl who grew up counting tips from night shifts, it felt like walking through heaven's door. 6 months later, he proposed under the chandeliers of the governor's ball. The ring sparkled like a star trapped in gold. The crowd gasped, and she said yes before her tears could fall. For weeks, Atlanta couldn't stop talking about the nurse who won a billionaire's heart. Headlines called it a love story for the ages, but fairy tales have fine print. Behind every diamond promise, there's a cost you don't see coming. And for Zariah, the bill was waiting. After the wedding, Malcolm whispered, "You don't need to work anymore." It sounded like devotion, like luxury wrapped in love. Zariah handed in her resignation and stepped into a life of silk sheets and quiet mornings. But the quiet grew heavy. Friends called. She let it ring. Her mother's voice on the phone became rarer. Malcolm always had a reason. "You need rest, babe. The world can be cruel." Soon, every decision had to pass through him. The color of her dress, the people she saw, even the way she laughed at dinner parties. When she asked for her bank card, he smiled. "You have me. What else could you need?" The house was huge, the silence bigger. Some nights she sat by the window, staring at the city she used to belong to. Freedom looked close, but felt a world away. Love was no longer warm, it was velvet and steel. Sunday dinner should have felt like home. Evelyn Cole brought sweet potato pie and laughter from the old neighborhood. But Malcolm hated the noise. When Evelyn said grace a little too loud, he leaned over and muttered, "Too country." Later, while pouring wine, he joked, "Your mama should be my maid." The guests laughed. Zariah forced a smile that hurt her cheeks. Her mother's hands folded tight in her lap. She didn't argue, didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. They carried a question Zariah couldn't face. "Who have you become, baby?" After dinner, Evelyn hugged her daughter longer than usual. "Be careful what you trade for comfort," she whispered. Zariah brushed it off, saying, "He's just playing, Mama." But deep inside, something small and sacred began to wilt. Respect. The word lingered between them long after Evelyn left, and though Zariah didn't know it yet, that dinner table would be the first crack in her golden life. The sound of love turning into control. If you've ever smiled to hide your shame, you'll understand her soon. After that dinner, things didn't explode. They just got quieter. Too quiet. Control doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. It started small. Malcolm told Zariah what color looked classy, what friends fit their image. Soon, every choice passed through his approval. He checked her phone, deleted contacts he didn't like, and smiled when she noticed. Her debit card stopped working one morning. The joint account password had changed. When she asked, he said, "I'm protecting our money. Too many gold diggers out there." He framed control as care. Every rule came wrapped in concern. "I'm just keeping you safe, baby." But what he really kept was her freedom. Bills arrived under his name. Packages, cars, even her phone plan belonged to him. She lived inside his empire, but owned nothing. Some nights she sat by the window, watching the world she used to touch. Her reflection stared back, beautiful, polished, trapped. And in the glow of that mansion's light, love had become another kind of prison. Evelyn's health began to fail. Her kidneys were giving up. The doctor spoke in numbers and urgency. Zariah begged Malcolm for help. He didn't even look up from his laptop. Isn't that what insurance is for? She sold her jewelry, one piece at a time, to cover the hospital bills. When he found the receipt, he exploded. "You went behind my back for that woman?" That woman was her mother, the only person who ever worked 3 jobs so Zariah could eat. He froze her remaining cards. "You want to play nurse again? Go earn it." Zariah cried into her pillow that night. Pride, shame, and fear twisted inside her. Money had once felt like security. Now it felt like chains. Every beep of her mother's monitor echoed in her head like a countdown. And for the first time, Zariah realized love without compassion is cruelty wearing a suit. The call came during Malcolm's charity gala. Evelyn was fading fast. Zariah grabbed her purse. Malcolm blocked the door. "Not tonight. You always make everything dramatic." When she tried to push past him, he locked the door from the outside. Hours passed. Music echoed through the mansion walls. At 3 a.m., her phone lit up. Call ended. By the time Malcolm unlocked the door, it was over. Evelyn was gone. Zariah sank to the floor, clutching the phone to her chest. The scream never came out. Only silence. A silence so deep it scraped her bones. In that moment, she understood something Malcolm never could. You can rebuild money. You can rebuild power. But once a mother's voice is gone, it never comes back. The next 5 days blurred together. Paperwork, condolences, silence that never filled the room. Then came the funeral. Mount Olive Church overflowed with faces from Evelyn's life. Neighbors, nurses, friends. Zariah stood at the pulpit, her voice shaking through her eulogy. She spoke of long nights, of laughter, of her mother's faith that carried them through hunger. Malcolm arrived 45 minutes late. Red suit, black shades. He sat in the last pew, scrolling his phone. When it rang, he answered without shame. "Yeah, I'm at this thing. Make it quick." Whispers rippled through the room. Zariah swallowed hard and kept reading. Her grief was raw, but her dignity was louder. Behind her, Andre's jaw tightened. Aunt Ruth's eyes burned. Every word she spoke felt like a goodbye to both her mother and the woman she used to be. She didn't know the next moment would end the silence she'd lived in for years. At the graveside, the sun beat down. Zariah clutched a handful of roses, her tears mixing with dirt. Then Malcolm's voice cut through the prayers. "Stop this ghetto crying and get in the car now." The world stopped moving. Andre stepped forward. "What did you just say to my sister?" Malcolm didn't blink. "Stay out of this. I'll drag her if I have to." Zariah looked up, eyes empty, heart burning. She whispered, steady and calm. "Then start dragging." The crowd gasped. Malcolm froze. It was the first time she had ever spoken back. He sneered, hissed, 2 hours, or the locks change. Then he walked away, gravel crunching under his shoes. Everyone watched his red car disappear. Zariah's knees gave out and Andre caught her. In that collapse, she wasn't weak. She was reborn. After he drove away, the noise faded, but the damage didn't. What remained was grief and a strange, heavy calm. Malcolm's car disappeared down the road, red paint glinting under the sun. He never looked back. Andre wrapped his arms around his sister as the last shovel of dirt hit their mother's grave. "You ain't alone no more," he whispered. Zariah nodded, but her heart was somewhere far away, buried with the woman who had loved her through everything. That night, she couldn't go home, not to the mansion full of ghosts. She drove to her mother's small apartment in West End. The place smelled like cinnamon and hope. The curtains were still open the way Evelyn liked. On the table sat a plain white envelope. Inside, a letter from the family lawyer. "Your mother requested a private reading of her will. Please come tomorrow morning." Zariah stared at the signature, hands trembling. She didn't expect much. Evelyn had spent her life giving, not saving. But deep down, she felt something waiting. Something her mother had left behind that might still protect her. For the first time in years, Zariah slept without fear. Only exhaustion and silence filled the room, and somewhere inside that quiet, a flicker of hope returned. The next morning, Zariah sat in the lawyer's office. The walls smelled of paper and dust, the kind of room where truth lived quietly. Mr. Henson adjusted his glasses and spoke gently. "Your mother was a remarkable woman, Miss Cole. She left a personal letter for you." He slid a sealed envelope across the table. The handwriting was familiar, graceful, patient, Evelyn's. Zariah broke the seal. Her mother's words unfolded like a whisper from beyond. "A mother always knows. I couldn't leave this world without protecting you. Inside the box you'll find the truth, and maybe your freedom. This is my way of holding your hand, baby." Tears fell before she could stop them. It felt like Evelyn was still in the room, guiding her one last time. Mr. Henson handed her a small brass key. "It belongs to a safety deposit box at First National Bank," he said softly. Zariah held the key close to her heart. Her mother's love had become her compass, even in death. The bank was cold and quiet, its marble floors echoing with her footsteps. Zariah handed over the key, her palms slick with sweat. The clerk opened the vault, revealing a small metal box marked 847. Inside were 3 thick folders, neatly labeled in her mother's careful handwriting. Malcolm Pierce, marriages. Malcolm Pierce, business. Malcolm Pierce, real name. Her stomach tightened. Each page was heavy with proof. Photographs, police reports, court orders. There was a marriage certificate from years before, divorce papers, restraining orders, hospital records. The woman's name appeared again and again. Leslie Chen, her husband's ex-wife. Zariah's vision blurred as she flipped through the documents. Broken ribs, stolen money, threats. She pressed a shaking hand against her chest. The world she'd believed in, the love she defended, began to crumble piece by piece. Her mother had known, and she had fought for this truth until her final breath. Zariah sat at her mother's old kitchen table, the folders spread before her like evidence from a crime. The last file carried the biggest shock. His name wasn't even Malcolm Pierce. It was Marcus Penn. There it was in black and white. A criminal record from another state. Fraud, assault, financial abuse. The man she married had built his empire on lies and stolen identities. Her mother's notes told the rest. Evelyn had met Leslie Chen 18 months earlier. The two women had compared scars, shared stories, and hired an investigator. The final report included a business card. FBI Special Agent Talia Brooks. Zariah's pulse pounded in her ears. Evelyn had already contacted the authorities. She had built a case. and all that remained was to finish it. The truth didn't set Zariah free yet, but it gave her something stronger than fear: direction. For the first time, she saw Malcolm not as her husband, but as what he truly was: a fraud wearing love like a mask. Zariah reread the last lines of her mother's letter, tears smudging the ink. "You are stronger than you think. Take your life back." The words hit her harder than any slap Malcolm had ever given. They weren't comfort. They were a command. She closed her eyes and saw Evelyn's smile, the way she used to say, "You got my fire, girl. Don't let nobody dim it." Zariah stood and looked around the apartment. It wasn't much: peeling wallpaper, flickering lights, but it felt more like home than that mansion ever did. Every pain she had buried, every insult she had swallowed began to turn into something fierce. Not rage, resolve. She packed the folders, the letter, and the key into a bag. Tomorrow, she would find that FBI agent. Tomorrow, she would finish what her mother started. For now, she whispered to the empty room, "Thank you, Mama. I hear you." And for the first time, she truly meant it. By morning, the decision was made. She would finish what her mother started. The next morning, Zariah walked into the downtown Federal Building, clutching the folders to her chest. Her palms were damp, but her voice stayed steady when she gave her name at the reception desk. Minutes later, a woman in a navy suit appeared. Short hair, calm eyes, a presence that filled the hallway without raising her voice. "Agent Talia Brooks," she said, offering her hand. "Your mother spoke with me once." Zariah blinked. "You knew her?" Brooks nodded. "She was brave. She gave us more than evidence. She gave us heart. But to finish this, we need him on tape." Zariah's breath caught. "You mean I have to face him?" Brooks studied her for a moment. "I won't lie. It's dangerous. But you know him better than anyone. If you can get him talking, we can take him down for good." The words didn't feel heroic. They felt heavy. But in them was something Zariah hadn't felt in years: control. She signed the papers, slid the folders across the table, and whispered to herself, "For you, Mama." Agent Brooks laid the equipment on the table: a small wire transmitter, a recording pen, an emergency button. Zariah stared at them. "What if he hurts me?" Brooks met her eyes. "Then we'll be right outside. But this is your moment, Zariah. The world believes his lies. You have the power to end them." They rehearsed every line: how to lead the conversation, how to stay calm, when to step back. Zariah repeated each word until her voice stopped shaking. When the briefing ended, Brooks placed a hand on her shoulder. "Fear means you're still alive. Courage means you'll do it anyway." Zariah nodded. The fear didn't fade, but it began to shift shape. She wasn't the scared wife anymore. She was her mother's daughter, carrying proof and purpose. As she walked out of the office, the afternoon light hit her face. For the first time, it didn't feel like judgment. It felt like permission. Zariah sat in her car across from the mansion's long driveway. The wire was already fitted under her blouse. Her hands trembled as she scrolled to his number. When Malcolm answered, his tone was smooth, careless. "Zariah, thought you'd be smarter than this." Her voice came out soft, trembling. "I'm sorry. You were right. I just want to come home." He chuckled. "That's my girl. I knew you'd crawl back. You have nothing without me." She bit her lip hard enough to taste blood. "Can I come tonight?" "Of course," he said. "I'll have champagne waiting." When the line went dead, the car fell silent. Zariah pressed a palm to her chest, feeling her heart slam against the microphone. She whispered, "Mama, if you're watching, give me strength." Then she started the engine and drove toward the house she once called home. The Pierce mansion glowed against the cold night. Zariah stepped out of her car, every breath visible in the air. Inside, the marble floors gleamed like mirrors. Malcolm waited in the living room, drink in hand, smirk already forming. "Finally realized your place?" he asked. Zariah smiled faintly. "I did." She hid the wire beneath her blouse and stepped closer. The room smelled of cologne and lies. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You should have never left, sweetheart. You know I forgive you." Every word made her skin crawl, but she kept her voice steady. "I want to talk about us, about the truth." His eyes narrowed slightly. Truth? She nodded. There's something you should know. He leaned back, amused. This should be good. Outside, in an unmarked van, Agent Brooks and her team listened through static. Inside, Zariah took one slow breath. The storm was about to begin. Zariah's voice barely trembled. I know about Leslie. Malcolm's smile vanished. Who told you that name? She met his eyes. My mother. The silence turned thick. He set his glass down slowly. Your mother should have minded her business. Zariah kept going. She did. Right until the end. She knew everything, Malcolm, or should I say, Marcus Penn. He froze. Color drained from his face. What did you just call me? I know about the fraud, the lies, the abuse, about how you changed your name and built your fortune on other people's pain. His composure cracked. You think you can accuse me and walk away? She didn't flinch. I don't have to walk away. You're already finished. He stepped closer, voice low and sharp. Careful, Zariah. But she didn't back up. The wire under her blouse recorded every word, every breath. And outside, the agents waited, listening as justice began to speak for itself. The tension in the room cracked like lightning. Malcolm's face twisted, the mask gone. She tried to ruin me, he shouted, veins rising on his neck. I did what I had to do. Zariah didn't move. You hurt her. You hurt them all. He slammed his fist on the table. You think you can destroy me too? She met his glare, calm but burning inside. You already did. For a heartbeat, silence filled the room. Then Malcolm laughed, a sound too sharp, too loud. You don't know who you're dealing with. I built everything from nothing. People like you, people like her, they don't get to win. Zariah's voice softened. And yet, here we are. He stepped closer, eyes wild. You'd throw away all this for your dead mother's lies? Zariah whispered, They're not lies. They're proof. Every word, every confession sank into the hidden mic beneath her blouse. Outside, the agents leaned closer to the speakers, hearing the truth unravel. And inside that mansion, Malcolm's empire began to crumble, one furious sentence at a time. Malcolm's rage dropped to a chilling whisper. He moved closer until she could smell the whiskey on his breath. I could make you disappear, he said. Zariah's pulse hammered, but she didn't move. The FBI might disagree. His eyes flickered. You called them? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Malcolm grabbed her wrist, his grip like iron. You think they'll protect you? You're nothing without me. Zariah swallowed the fear rising in her throat. That's where you're wrong. I was nothing with you. He tightened his hold, voice breaking into a growl. Say that again. I was nothing with you. Outside, Agent Brooks signaled to her team. The tension inside the room was seconds from snapping. Malcolm's hand shook with fury. I'll ruin you, Zariah. I'll ruin everyone you love. But before he could say another word, a voice roared through the front door. FBI! Hands where we can see them! The door burst open, echoing through the marble hall. Agents flooded in, weapons raised. Malcolm spun around, shouting, I'm Malcolm Pierce. You can't do this. Agent Brooks stepped forward, calm and firm. You're under arrest, Marcus Penn. He froze. The name hit him like a blow. That's not... You have the right to remain silent, she continued. You're charged with fraud, money laundering, and assault. Two agents pulled his hands behind his back. He fought, twisting, yelling, You don't know who I am. Zariah stood still, tears burning behind her eyes but not falling. She watched as they dragged him past her, the same man who once swore to love her forever. Their eyes met one last time. His were filled with panic, hers with peace. When the front door slammed shut, the house finally exhaled. The silence left behind wasn't empty. It was freedom. By dawn, the story broke. His face was everywhere. Pierce Empire under investigation. From billionaire to criminal. Reporters camped outside the gates, shouting questions into microphones. Stocks plummeted. Investors vanished. Partners disowned him. The mansion, once filled with luxury and power, became evidence. Rooms were stripped bare, portraits taken down, cars towed away. People who once toasted his success now pretended they'd never known his name. Zariah watched it all unfold on the evening news from her mother's small apartment. Every headline felt like justice whispered back to her. Still, she didn't smile. Justice was never sweet. It was quiet, heavy. She turned off the TV and looked around the simple room, where love had once lived without wealth, without control. For the first time, she didn't feel small. She felt enough. The house was empty now. The echo of her footsteps filled the space once claimed by his voice. Zariah walked through the living room, touching the marble walls one last time. No fear followed her. No shadow spoke her name. She stepped onto the balcony. The city stretched beneath her, bright and alive. The air smelled like rain and second chances. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Mama, I'm free." The words floated into the wind and came back softer, as if carried by her mother's memory. For 6 years, she'd lived in a cage made of diamonds. Now, with nothing left to lose, she finally had everything that mattered. No money, no fame, no control, just peace. And peace, she realized, was the richest thing she'd ever owned. A year passed like a long exhale after years of holding her breath. Marcus Penn, was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. The courtroom was silent when the verdict fell, his once perfect suit wrinkled, his gaze empty. Zariah didn't attend the hearing. She didn't need to. Justice didn't require her applause. She moved back into a small apartment with Andre. They split rent, shared laughter again, learned to breathe without fear. Andre teased her when she signed up for nursing school again. "Back to saving people, huh?" Zariah smiled. "Maybe this time I'll start with myself." The nights were still hard sometimes, but they were honest. She studied late, brewed coffee at dawn, and let music fill the quiet corners of her life. One morning, she found an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a simple card. "Proud of you, Z." Signed, T. Brooks. Zariah held it for a long time. The world had fallen apart, but somehow she'd found her way back to purpose, and that was worth more than any fortune ever could be. It happened by chance, at a small cafe near the courthouse. Zariah almost didn't recognize her at first. Leslie Chen, Malcolm's first wife, the woman from the files. Leslie stood, unsure, then smiled softly. "Zariah?" They didn't need words. They hugged. Two survivors stitched together by scars that matched. Leslie's voice shook. "We survived him." Zariah nodded, eyes wet. "And we're still standing." They sat for hours, not talking about the pain, but about life beyond it. Books, family, little things that made them laugh. Each shared story was a piece of healing, one woman's strength reflected in the others. Before leaving, Leslie reached across the table. "He took years from us, but he didn't take everything." Zariah squeezed her hand. "No, he didn't take who we are." When they parted, the sky outside was soft and gold. For the first time, Zariah didn't feel defined by what she'd survived. She felt defined by what she'd become. Months later, the city's news covered a new foundation. Evelyn's House. Founded by Zariah Cole, it offered legal aid, housing, and financial education for women escaping abuse. At the ribbon cutting, she spoke into the microphone, her voice steady, her heart full. No woman should pay for her freedom with her pain. The audience stood in quiet applause. Behind her on the wall hung a framed photo of Evelyn, smiling, apron still dusted with flour. Every check written, every door opened in that house, carried her mother's spirit. When reporters asked why she started it, Zariah simply said, "Because one woman's courage saved my life. Now it's my turn." The building smelled of new paint and hope. Children played in the courtyard, their laughter echoing through fresh walls. Money had once been her cage. Now it was her tool. And Evelyn's name would live on, not as tragedy, but as triumph. On a quiet Sunday morning, Zariah visited her mother's grave. The air was cool, the sky washed in pale blue. She knelt down and placed a single white rose on the grass. "You saved me, Mama," she whispered, "even after you were gone." For a moment, there was only stillness. Then a soft wind moved through the trees, brushing her hair like a mother's hand. Zariah closed her eyes. She remembered Evelyn's laugh, the way she'd hum while cooking, the warmth that never asked for anything in return. "I'm doing what you taught me," she said, "helping others find their way out. You gave me more than love. You gave me courage." The leaves rustled again, a gentle sound that felt like an answer. Zariah smiled through her tears. "Rest easy, Mama. I got it from here." And when she stood up, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. Her mother's love was everywhere. Standing there, she realized her story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to every woman who had ever been silenced. Money built his world. Love rebuilt mine. No one has the right to own your voice, your choices, or your life. For years, I believed silence was survival. Now, I know silence is surrender. If someone ever made you feel small, remember, you are still enough. You don't need permission to be free. You don't need wealth to have worth. Freedom begins the moment you stop apologizing for your pain. I learned that power doesn't live in money or control. It lives in the courage to stand up, to walk away, to rebuild when the world thinks you can't. To every woman who has ever been told she is too loud, too emotional, too much, you are exactly what strength looks like. This story isn't about revenge. It's about recovery. It's about turning pain into purpose and loss into legacy. If this story reached you, share it. Not for me, but for every voice still trapped in silence. Because freedom doesn't arrive all at once. It begins the first time you whisper, "No more."